We have Gabriel Bol-Deng in the studio with us. It's wonderful to see you again.
Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to sharing my life stories and the work in South Sudan.
And you have such a compelling life story. We were telling our listeners a little bit about it, but I think they should hear it straight from you. So what happened when you were what, 12, 11 or 12?
Yeah, that age, yeah. Yeah, because of civil war, my village got attacked when I was 12 years old. And the attack on the village happened when I was away. I was looking after the family cows in the field. And it was in the afternoon when I heard the sound of a gun. So I was surprised. I got up, I looked around, and I saw militiamen carrying guns with them. So I dug down and covered myself with the grass so that they could not shot me. And after a couple of minutes, I saw them taking the cows toward North Sudan. And I kept hiding, covering myself with the grass. And after I knew that they would not be able to see me, I ran home. I got up and ran home. And when I went home, I found everything was on fire. The houses were on fire.
The entire village.
The entire village. People were killed. And at that point, I lose hope of finding my family. And I had to run into the forest at night. And at some point, I had to climb up the tree to escape being eaten by a lion. And that really began the journey. After the following morning, I was joined by a group of people, mostly young boys and girls, who were fleeing their villages. And they found me on the tree, and I asked for help. They welcomed me down. They told me to join them, and we walked for 4 months, barefooted.
That's amazing.
Avoiding so many crocodiles in the river, especially in River Nile. And by luck and by working hard, I was able to survive. But I think it goes back to what made me survive was really the lesson I learned from my family. That when I was young, my parents used to tell me hope is very important. Having positive attitude is very important. Never give up was very important. And even to some extent, my dad told me that if I have hope, I could move Mountain Kilimanjaro. So, and along the journey, I began to see these challenges, the value of not giving up, the value of having the courage and hope. And there were a couple of times I have to admit that I almost gave up because the journey was tough. I saw a lot of people dying in front of me. And at that time, I thought I could give up. But again, the theme of the mountain and the positive attitude of trying the best I can to survive. So after 4 months, surviving diseases and hunger and snake bite, I was in a refugee camp. And the refugee camp was totally different. It was a different kind of nightmare because this was me at the age of 11 or 10.
And you were no longer in Sudan at that point?
I was no longer in Sudan. I was just in a refugee camp with other boys and girls.
Was this on the Kenyan?
It was in Ethiopia first.
Ethiopia.
Yeah, we first fled to Ethiopia. And it was really hard for a couple of years because it was boys and girls, young kids taking care of themselves. There was no meaningful life. There was no treatment. I would thought it would be living in a refugee camp was a different kind of prison because you don't have the freedoms. We didn't have the luxuries that a young child could do in the community, from their parents playing, going to a movie, or having a family counseling. These were the things that we were deprived of. We were just young kids trying to survive. Mm-hmm. And again, Africa is prone to civil war. After 4 years of not of peace, but with difficulties living in the camp, we had to run at gunpoint because at that time, 1991, the government in Ethiopia was overthrown. And at that point, again, we ran at gunpoint, saw a lot of people dying. And then at that age, I was about 14, 15, I came to Kenya. So I began again in another different thought of a prison, being in a refugee camp in Kenya. And life in Kenya was even far worse than in Ethiopia. In terms of social and food and medical. Kenya was really worse in terms of the refugee camp.
Yeah, I know this is an issue. You know, Gabrielle, I used to live in Africa. I spent some time in the north, in Egypt, which has a lot of refugees from Sudan as well. But what I learned there, kind of working with the UN High Commissioner on Refugees, was that many countries have different practices when it comes to how they treat refugees. I think Egypt was a bit of an exception because they would basically allow refugees or people who are seeking refugee status to kind of live with everyone else. But a lot of governments do want to maintain this camp situation because I guess they're worried that people who are in the refugee camp might kind of break out and just
everything
never...
is what I call the control. I think I have some of my friends who had been in Egypt. One of the good things was that the refugees were allowed to seek some work in the either in town or in hotels. But unlike Kenya, where in the first place we were put in the most harshest climate in Kenya, where we were just put in the desert. There was no rain. There was no way for us to use our own creativity to grow gardens and all this. We just depend on the UN. We were confined. It was like a concentration camp, different kind of concentration camp, because we're not allowed to travel anywhere in the country. It's just in that refugee camp all year round. And it was a different kind of prison. But I think after, let me go back, after being by myself for almost 5 years, and I did have some trauma, some depression, and at that point I was almost to the extent that I even went to give up or kill myself or go back to the village and all, but there was no way. I was being captive in that sense. And at some point I have to come with I would come with terms with what I was going through, the reality of realizing that I may not be able to see my family again. This is the reality I have to live with, and I have to be content with, and do whatever I can in order to survive using the same values that my parents taught me.
And you remembered that they told you to not give up hope and to be resilient and to keep trying. So even though you were desperate, you overcame it. And your story, I always feel very, very humbled and at the same time very inspired, because few of us have lives as hard as you've had. But you did. You came to a hopeful place.
Yeah, and if there is one thing I always learn from this is that always my parents say, don't let the suffering or failure define you. It is really us who define the suffering. And after we suffer, what is essential? What are we doing with the way we suffered? How can we let others learn from it? And I always say that's why I took an initiative. That people ask me sometimes, Gabriel, this is a painful story. Why are you not upset? Why are you sharing your story? And I said, look, I'm a human being, and there are several. We are all human beings. We learn from one another. And my goal is really to share my story so that people who are in this country, especially young generation, young children who are far removed from what it's like to be at a refugee camp, be what it's like to be at war, that I think I would, my hope would be to my life story would put the face or human face on the children suffering around the walls, either in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Somalia, or in Sudan, where the government is currently bombing the citizen. That I want people really to emphasize and also not to be bystanders, speak up.
Right.
And I see my role that when I speak up, I'm amplifying the voices of people who don't have the platform to share or for their voice to be heard. And I really grateful that you gave me the opportunity so that I can share my story. And I hope people listening outside there will really empathize with anybody, with any child that has been affected, because war affect our children, affect our members of the families.
Yeah, it's such a powerful story for so many reasons. One of the things that is so clear is that the challenge is not just physical, but also emotional and psychological.
You're listening to Gabriel Bol-Deng's story. He's one of the lost boys from Sudan. We're very much we're very fortunate to have him in the studio today, and you are listening to WRFI Watkins Glen, Ithaca, community radio by the people for the people, and this is the Human Rights and Social Justice Program with me, Ute Ritz-Deutch, and co-hosting
Chantal Thomas. Yes. Thank you so much for being here, Gabrielle. You were telling us your incredible story. How did you make it from the refugee camp in Kenya? How did you come to find yourself in Syracuse?
Especially with the winter. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I always joke with people that had I been given opportunity to choose where I stay, I would go to Arizona.
Where it's warmer. Well,
Yeah.
Arizona, they have problems too.
Yeah,
so.
but I think this is really the beauty of America, that after, I don't know how it happened, but in 2000 we were approached by the U.S. government with some NGOs, especially United Nations, that some of us would be allowed to come to the United States, and we were asked to apply. So I applied with the effort with an attempt to come here, and I was one of the lucky few, about 4,000, one of the 4,000 selected to come to this country.
So this was a visa, it was a special political asylum,
Yep.
and there was a numerical limit the State Department gave,
Yes.
4,000 visas.
Yeah, it was just it was 4,000. Then you
Right.
apply, and then when you select it, then the now called Homeland Security or NIS.
INS it used to be. Yeah.
So they choose different settlement program in the country. Settlement agencies, it could be church, it could be, or even a community radio program could sponsor a refugee. So Catholic Charity in Onondaga County was my sponsor, that they will provide me for the first 4 months the basic needs. My apartment would be paid for, they would give me some cash, and during 4 months I would be going through training in case I work on my English, finding a job. So I was one of the lucky few that came, and I didn't even believe that I would one day come here. And after I came here, I went to schools.
How old were you when you came?
I was 21 years old in 2001, and I did not graduate from high school, but I was hungry for education, because
Yes.
with education can empower me to improve my life, and also use my education to help my country, to help the world, and make the world a better place. So I went to college here, and then in 2007 I graduated from Lemoyne College. And in 2007, I decided to go back to the village, because I never ever heard from my parents in 2007. And there were some questions that I was not able to answer on my own.
You didn't know if they were still
And
alive?
I didn't know, and they themselves, my family, didn't know that I was alive.
Right.
So I always say I went back to the village to look for my family, so that I could close the running away chapter of my life. And there were several, is my family alive? What had become of them? And I went back in 2007. And this was after 2 years of the signing of the comprehensive peace agreement between the North and South Sudan. And when I went in the village, I met 2 brothers. I have uncles and aunts. But the village was really not the same, the village I knew. Their lives has been torn into pieces. But one of the things, the community had the desire to rebuild, to pick up the pieces and rebuild them to be human again. That's one of the things that I've seen. People in South Sudan, like any other people around the world, that they both love material wealth, they lost material wealth, and their loved ones. So I saw this community that has been devastated by civil war, but they have the resiliency and the desire to rebuild their community. So I came back here after, in the village, I saw the kids learning under the tree. And I came back here and decided to began to ask myself a question: what can I do in this case? Should I keep silent, have a good job here, move on with my life? Or do I have human obligation to try to help bring education to the village? And I decided to take the initiative, because education is power, that when citizens are equally educated like their leaders, they will hold their leaders accountable, they will use their education to be productive, contributing members of the community. And I say, no, I'm not going to keep quiet. I'm going to speak, sharing my story, and whoever can listen to my story and then support the effort in the village, that is really great. So as of 2011, we drilled 9 wells. We have built a decent school educating 500 boys and girls, and that is really my hope. My hope that to inspire the kids to give the voice to the kids in the village through education, and use my education and my voice to amplify their voices through such wonderful community radio program.
So, Gabriel, is there a website that people can visit to learn more about your life story and the projects you're involved with today?
Yeah, we have website Hope, the word Hope for Ariang. Ariang is ARIANG.org. Hope for Ariang.org.
All right.
Yes, so Hope for Ariang, that's Hope for ARIANG, and then .org.
And how often do you go back? Do you go back and forth, or are you sort of involved there in teaching classes, or how did you recruit teachers for these? I mean, as an educator myself,
and I think
I'm really interested. in
one
how
of
you
the
did
beauty things about South Sudan is the fact that most of the refugees that were in Kenya and Uganda had some thought of education, not nursery, what college education. So there are refugees who have now returned home. And what I did, I recruit the local to teach in the schools. During the construction or building of the school, I used to go twice a year, but now I go once a year. Part of it is that, as I said, the community is very resilient. They will sacrifice to make sure that the school succeed. I see my role as a facilitator.
Right.
I'm not going here with the money and do it by myself.
Right.
I go here with American donations and say, this is how do you need it to be done? And say, this is 1, 2, 3. So my job, I facilitate. I work with them and for them.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot
really
of sense. I would think that if you're trying to help a community anywhere, that it's quite probable that the community knows better than you would necessarily if you're based outside what it needs to do and how it should go about doing it. So that sounds like the right way to
and then
do it.
I call it the holistic approach, and I always say that I think people that have been affected by war or poverty, or even our own country here, there's poverty, there's still some of the social injustice in this country. But I think it is the people who have experienced poverty, it is people who have experienced either racism or any kind of discrimination, that with a little help, with a little support, they themselves will pull themselves out of poverty, out of war, and out of any other discrimination. And I think there's no better way to really help the community or any social issues than giving the voice. And this is what this community radio is doing, giving the voice for those whose their voice would have otherwise been white. So my belief is that that just everyone need help. It would be like when you fall down. So that is what a good Samaritan would come and pick your hand up and then bring you to your feet. And that's really how I see it. Either in Hurricane Sandy or in Katrina or any other social or any other natural disaster, or sometimes man-made, like September 11. Americans came together, they put their generosity together, they show their resilience and all this, and with a little help, anybody can be successful. But when we go with the attitude that we are saving them, we are doing disservice to those people. And I always say people who has been affected by war or any other discrimination, that those people, what they need is just a little help. And with a little help, they could pull themselves out. And that could be applied anywhere, with a woman, girl empowerment or women discrimination, all this. They need a little push, and then they will pull themselves out of the problem that they are in.
Going back to the story, initially when you were building the school, you were trying to get both boys and girls to come, and there was this challenge to get girls to the school, and you actually had to then also get involved in drilling water wells to make sure that the girls could come.
Yeah, and I think that is really one of the things that I think in the world, if there is anything we need to do more, is inclusion, to be inclusive in what we do, because of the cultural barriers and cultural attitude toward women. Women in South Sudan or even in Africa has been neglected in giving them paths to education. So my goal, having interacted and also seen in this country what contribution women has made in this country, it has inspired me that when I go back to the village, I decided, no, there's no way I could build a school and girls are not coming to the school. So
Right.
I drilled the wells.
Well,
That
it's-
was one of the reasons we drilled the wells, to bring young girls to school. And sometimes when I speak in the high schools or middle school, they don't really understand that how could you drill a well and bring girls to the schools. And I always say you shorten the distances because
It's
young
the girl's job.
yeah,
right?
it's
Yeah.
a girl's
Carry the
job to get water. But
Right.
if you drill a wells next to their house or next to their block, then that would free them up the distance and then would go to schools and have an education. We have wells at the school. So girls could come also with their container to the school. They will learn in the morning, and then in the evening they will take back water. And that is really my belief. We have, in order for Africa and for our world to have an inclusion, to have a successful, just and just world or equitable world, we have to empower everybody, especially women.
I love this story. It's not only inspiring, but it's inspired. So it's just such a great example of just a really clever problem solving that, you know, if you were trying to figure out how to reach this goal of including girls and realizing that if you sort of stepped back one step, that the major obstacle was that girls are usually the ones in their families in these areas who are carrying water, and sometimes they have to walk for hours to
miles.
go, you know, to and from, and you know, so you might see just, you know, in the morning, the evening, girls kind of going back and forth carrying water, carrying firewood, and to enable families to address that need and free up the time, you know, of these girls, I think was a great. You know, but not only does it help the village by bringing water closer, but it also, you have this sort of multiple win scenario, which is great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. And the school project again is Hope for Our Young, and Our Young, that's the area.
The village, yeah.
That's the village, right?
And again, so the website is hopeforariang.org, right? I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your experience when you did come here to the cold north of the U.S. in Syracuse. I'm assuming you didn't speak much, if any, English. What was the process like in just trying to get settled and then also even attending class? I mean, how
And
did you?
It must have been a culture shock just going shopping.
Yeah, I think that
yeah.
that was the shopping and especially going to Wakeman and see food. And so it was really a big, was one of the big cultural shock.
Yes.
Cultural shock.
And you have an entire aisle just for pet food.
For, you know.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and so but that time, even I still feel the girl that yesterday, when I go to the village, people have hardly anything to eat. But when I came in, there is so much plenty in this country, and some of my cultural shock were really the weather, snow, and my past impression of snow was I thought snow was sugar on the ground.
Snow is sugar on the ground.
Sugar on the ground.
That
but
would be
it was-
great, actually.
But it was really good. And then I think when I came in 2000, I had a very good command on English. Probably I have worked on my accent, but I think I was good in speaking.
So
and
did
in
you
writing.
learn English in the refugee camps,
Yeah.
or did you have it before in Sudan?
No,
or?
but I didn't learn any English in Sudan.
Okay.
I began school when I was 13, 14 years old.
Okay.
Yeah,
So when you
yeah.
came, you had already
Yeah,
a
when
good
I came,
knowledge.
I was I had a high school education,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't graduate from high school. So what I did my GED,
Okay.
and I went to Onondaga Community College. And I'm really a big fan of community college. They were really good. They grounded me.
And
into
I
that
also
program.
started in a community college. I did. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
it was really good. And then
Yeah.
again, this is how I use it. I think I had some like it would have been different had I been picked in the village and bring here. It would have been totally different kind of cultural shock. But having gone through the difficulties, the experience, and all this, I think taught me to be more resilient, to be more perseverant. So when I came here, I was an adult, but having gone through these challenges, I think it grounded me to confront the challenges and find a way to to assimilate into the culture. Yeah.
I'm sure most of us listening are thinking that, our normal daily frustration might involve a little bit of traffic or something like that. But, the multiple, chapters that you had to go through and still persevere through every one of them to get here. So it makes sense that by the time you got here, you had a lot of notches on your belt of victories that you had won through various challenges, not just surviving the initial trauma, the initial conflict, but so many more challenges after that.
And I think it really puts our own challenges and frustrations into perspective. And I think it's important to periodically remind ourselves of that. Really, in so many ways, we are so privileged. And even though, our day-to-day struggles can be very frustrating and sometimes downright depressing even, it's just important to keep the context in mind and to, be mindful of the other almost 7 billion people on the planet, the vast majority of who have it significantly worse than we do. And if you can manage to keep that in mind, I think it also helps to be grateful then, right? And to have a greater sense of appreciation for the things that we do have.
That's
yes,
right.
and I love that your parents told you, if you have hope, you can move mountains. That is such a powerful parable. And I think you have moved mountains.
And I think everyone can move their own mountain too with a little help, and with a little help from our friend. I know that what I believe, we all human beings, but I think we should not let the failure or suffering define us. It is us who should define suffering, and that is the whole thing I have learned from all this experience.
Yeah. One of the books actually that I'm using in one of my classes is a book by Viktor Frankl. And the title of the book is Man's Search for Meaning. And Viktor Frankl was
existentialist,
and a trained psychologist who then became a prisoner in concentration camps. He was in several concentration camps, but he developed logotherapy, which is all about creating meaning. And what he found in studying concentration camp survivors, or also people who didn't survive, that's what he was trying to figure out. How do some people survive? And what he concluded is, people who could make meaning in their life, people who could find meaning, as long as you have hope, or, if you have someone you love and you believe you will be reunited with them, or if you have some purpose in your life that we can find. And for Frankl, it was also his work, that he needed to share it with the world, that these are the things that can keep you going. And he also felt that, bad things happen and we may not have control over what happens to us, but we do have a fair amount of control over how we respond and how we react.
You are listening to WRFI Watkins Glen, Ithaca, and this is the weekly now Human Rights and Social Justice program. I'm Chantal Thomas, and
I'm Ute Ritz-Deutch, and it's just such a privilege, really, to be here with you, Chantal, and to be here with you, Gabriel, and I'm just really sometimes so humbled that I have this opportunity to get the message out, to raise awareness about human rights issues, and to bring such a compelling story to the community.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being with us today, folks.
You have been listening to WRFI, Watkins Glen, Ithaca. You can hear us at 88.1 in Ithaca, 91.9 in Watkins Glen, and streaming online at WRFI.org.